How much do the Seattle Seahawks hate the San Francisco 49ers after the fourth straight Lumen Field win for the 49ers? Oh my word. In this episode, I've got several awesome updates to end your weekend and kick off your new week. Plus, later in the video, I've also got some game thoughts we'll get into as well. But first, I want to kick off with some updates after you tell me your high and low from the game. Comment below your high and low from the game. The high for me, it could be, there's so many options out there. It could be Nick Bosa's moment at the very end of the game there. He doesn't technically, it's not going to count as a fumble for him, but he causes the fumble, so I love that one. It could be the Jake Tonjes moment, or it could be the 95-yard drive to open the game, to open the season for Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey out there. That's a very high take. On the low point, it could be either of the interceptions. It could be, there were a couple moments there where it felt like we couldn't get them off the field momentarily, but the defense started to get it figured out, which felt great as well. Let me know in the comments what you think about the highs and lows. We're going to get into some updates, though, because Kyle Shanahan just spoke. Jennifer Lee Chan has some good updates. A bunch of people out there had some very good updates. There was a silverback scare out there. I don't know if you caught it. I definitely caught it because I was freaking out about Trent Williams walking out the field. I saw him, taking a second to get up, a little bit of a long moment there. I felt that. Then he came off for the next play, and it felt even scarier. And then on the very next drive, he was back in, which felt really good. But Trent Williams shared that another player landed on his knee, which is why he was slow to get up, but added that he'll be back just fine. That's good. Need that. Absolutely needed Trent Williams. Not his best day today. I wonder if he wasn't feeling 100% after that injury. There were some moments there where I felt like Trent Williams was allowing some pressure. He had that penalty and kind of a key moment. Although the number of penalties we had, a lot of them felt like key moments. When it's all said and done at the end of the game, you look back and you say there's a couple of those that were definitely key moment penalties. But happy news for Trent Williams. Not so happy news for George Kittle and Juwan Jennings yet anyway. It was really nice to see George Kittle still on the sidelines, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Juwan Jennings, it sounds like he's in a lot of pain. So this is really, really unfortunate timing for George Kittle and Juwan Jennings. It's never ideal for you guys to go down injured, but especially not when you have two more games that you desperately need extra wide receiver help. And let's not forget George Kittle and Juwan Jennings are both a lot more than just receivers on this team. It's their downfield blocking. It's their run blocking. It's all of those extra things that they bring to the table, the culture, all of that, right? The raw team nature, building guys up, like that stuff that I definitely feel like the 49ers are going to miss. So we'll see. Nothing is secure right now, but interestingly, they're awaiting MRIs while Kyle Shanahan has said the 49ers are still pushing to bring back Kendrick Bourne. Just another body in there. We saw MVS out there. We saw Russell Gage Jr. out there. So there are other guys, and you know what? With an entire week having had, George Kittle, Russell Gage and Brock Purdy did really well in training camp together. So having a week knowing going into it, like he's going to have to be one of my guys, definitely helps the chances, but you cannot replace a George Kittle. You just can't replace him. The good news is, in my perspective, because of what we saw out of Christian McCaffrey, we saw Christian McCaffrey able to bear, I should say, some of that load that you definitely felt like last season. George Kittle was carrying a lot of the load when Christian McCaffrey couldn't play, and we saw the reverse of that today, that we saw Christian McCaffrey out there able to bear some of that burden on the team, and not just in the running game, but in the passing game as well. We'll get to some of that when we break down the game itself, but there's that news, some bad, some good in there, I suppose. You tell me if this is good news or bad news. I don't know if this is good news or bad news. Tim Kawakami asked Kyle Shanahan if Jake Moody will be the kicker next week, and he said he definitely will be. Now, that could just be coach speak. That could just be Kyle Shanahan, not aware of what's possible for next week, of how things might shake out if they do try to move for a kicker. So maybe Kyle Shanahan has to say that to save face, to show confidence, etc., just in case he's the kicker next week. I don't know, to be totally honest with you. The thing that scares me about that 27-yard miss in the first, was it the first half or just in the start of the second half? Somewhere around there. The thing that scares me the most about that miss, when you do the math, right, and you're like, okay, so the closest possible field goal a kicker could ever have is if you're on the goal line and you're too afraid to QB sneak it in for a touchdown and you decide you've got 10 yards and then you've got 7 yards to your kicker. So 10 yards being the end zone, sorry. So 17 yards is the shortest possible kick a kicker's ever going to have in the league, right? Well, 27 is not too far off of that. Like, that's pretty bad. And to boink it on that one, that was absolutely concerning. And Kyle Shanahan was very frustrated, understandably so. His doubling down on Jake Moody could be one of several things. Obviously, the draft capital is a factor. Like, let's not pretend like it's not. I think even Kyle Shanahan in close quarters, he's going to admit that. The other thing about Jake Moody that is interesting to me is how much of this is the lack of ability in the free agent market. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we couldn't upgrade in the free agent market. I think if anything, you look at the free agent market and you say there's got to be a couple guys in here who are at least 90% inside 30 yards. I'd like to believe that 90% inside 35 yards, right? I think you could probably get a guy like that. Okay, I don't think Greg Joseph's on the free agent list right now, so he might have gotten picked up by a team. I don't know for sure. But when I look at the other available guys, I think the issue is you don't have a clear, that guy is hands down better, quote unquote, than what we have in Jake Moody necessarily. I don't agree with that. I'm telling you that's how I think Kyle Shanahan is thinking about it, that basically you have this third round draft value that we put in this guy and we're going to keep him around because the next guy available isn't a significant increase, and so we might as well just keep rolling with this guy. Whatever. I don't know. In terms of leg talent and ability, sure. But how often do you throw a quarterback out there who has all the talent in the world and can't get it done? That's where Sam Darnold's career is where it is, because he has all of the talent in the world. He's a first-round draft pick. You know, he's like third overall or something like that? Like, he's a good quarterback on paper, but in the league, in the game, you need him to be able to actually produce, which today, not so much. But we'll talk about that later. That's not really important right this second. Moody's getting another second chance, which is like his fifth second chance, something like that. Purdy, however, had a very mixed outing. Very interesting there, but this stat did make me feel better. Kyle Posey pulled this one up. Per Next Gen Stats, Brock Purdy was pressured on 57.9% of his dropbacks today. That's the highest pressure rate Purdy's ever faced in a single game in his career. Wow. That's saying something. Now, how much of that is on this offensive line and how much of that is on their stout defensive line? It's sort of hard to mix between the two. I'd say it's a little bit of both, but I am a little concerned about the offensive line and how much pressure they give up to Purdy. I didn't feel like Purdy had happy feet too much. In fact, there was one moment, one of the interceptions where I felt like he didn't have a check down guy and he should have just scrambled. That's just what he should have done. I would have been okay if that's what he did. That pass to Ricky Pearsall just wasn't there, like, honestly. The second interception, that one were they both to Ricky Pearsall? They might have been. But the second one was even more not there. So interesting there. I think the first one was to Juwan Jennings. But there's interesting, like, I want to do a film breakdown on those interceptions. The first one is really interesting because Christian McCaffrey doesn't get to the second level, so there's no check down, which I think is interesting. The second one is fascinating because Brian Robinson Jr. was available for a check down. He was actually in a really good position and had a blocker, so it would have been a great check down scenario. I don't know if Brock Purdy couldn't see it in his vision because he was kind of off to the left, but I don't know. Either way, you don't love the interceptions that were thrown. What you do love is Brock Purdy being able to have that the goldfish memory, right? Brock Purdy on the game-winning drive goes 7 for 7, 68 yards and a touchdown. No Kittle, no Debo, no Aiyuk, no Jennings. He goes out there and he's able to put together something, which we'll give him credit for that. The pass to Jake Tonjes, some people are kind of hating on that pass. I don't hate on that pass. I see a guy who knows that if he gets it in the position where his tight end can go in there and fight for it, he can win that ball. I like that. I respect that about that. He was there for sure. The only thing I would say is if you have a passive guy, if you know your receivers and you've got a passive guy, like sometimes wide receivers don't really come to the ball, that's an interception 100% of the time. So fortunately, Jake Tonjes goes up there with tough hands and ends up coming down with the ball, but it works out. So interesting decision there. I suppose you can argue against it. I think with time and position and situation, I'm okay with it. Honestly, I really was. Okay, I did not want to go into a tie game, into overtime. I didn't want any of that. When you look at the breakdown, okay, and you get into the not the game cast. What am I talking about? Box score. Brock Purdy throws for 270 yards on 26 completions out of 35 attempts, and has 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Not ideal. Definitely far from ideal. Brock Purdy will come out of that game knowing he needs to improve, knowing he needs to not try to do so much, knowing he needs to check those checkdowns, scramble, whatever. Like, he would have been better off taking a knee. Like, as embarrassing as that would be, that would have been better, because there was no world in which that second pass was ending in the hands of Ricky Pearsall. There was no position. There was nothing Pearsall could have done better. Like, as far as I can tell, like, I haven't done like an in-depth all 22 film breakdown, but from what I saw, I don't think there's any world in which he's getting that. That pass was so easy to pick off, so easy to at least pass breakup, so easy. Then you look at Christian McCaffrey, 22 carries for 69 yards. Doesn't really do justice to how important he was on the field. Add in there what he did through the air. Christian McCaffrey going 9 for 73 yards as well. And it paints a little bit better of a picture. But I feel like there were a lot of like short yardage situations where Christian McCaffrey went in there and the goal was get 3 yards. And obviously you always hope that you go and get more. But at the end of the day, the number one goal is get a first down no matter what. And so you see him just jumping into the pile to get extra yards. And that's like, you know, those yards are not going to show up in the stats sheet the way that you would prefer them to. Brian Robinson doing all right there too. A little bit of a slow start for him. Started to find a rhythm pretty quickly though, compared to some of the other backups we've had, like last year, Isaac Guerrero, for example. It took a couple games to start to find a rhythm. But Brian Robinson Jr. finding a nice little rhythm. I was surprised. There were several good, like 9-yard runs, like just solid for a running back. That's like a chunk play to me. So really excited about that. And then Ricky Pearsall, only 4 receptions for 108 yards. Obviously has that one massive play, which goes for 45 yards. That definitely helps him with the stats, so to speak. But I mean, he was available. He was ready when you needed him to be. Some of those targets don't really do him justice because they're in like that one that was picked off. Like, what are you expecting out of Ricky Pearsall in that situation? That first one in a layered throw with no check down availability, that one's tricky because in a layered throw, we've seen Brock Purdy make that pass so many times. It needed to be a touch higher, but I think the linebacker was just a little further back than he anticipated there. So that's interesting there. Jake Tonjes, congrats to him for getting a touchdown on his 4th ever NFL target, 3rd ever NFL reception. That was special, and it ends up being the game winner. So really cool there. On the defensive side of the ball, though, there were a couple guys that absolutely balled out. We have to give Fred Warner his flowers. He's always stout. Even when he came off, that scared me, dude. The look on his face, he explained after the game that he thought he was like going to throw up because of the cleat to the face, and then I think his helmet like went into his face as well. His face mask went into his face. So like the two things combined, and then him just, about to puke. That's not an ideal scenario for sure for Fred Warner, but the way he was like reeling on the ground, I was super nervous. It was like a back thing because he was laying on his back, and I was really concerned for a minute there until I started seeing some tweets from those who were close to the situation, Matt Mayoko, Matt Barros, etc., saying it looks like it's his face, it looks like it's blood coming out of his nose. That made me feel a little bit better. I was a little concerned about concussion, but overall definitely seemed a little bit better there. Nick Bosa, though. Nick Bosa had an outstanding game. Okay. 6 solo tackles, 1 sack, and 3 tackles for loss. I mean, a monster game. And several pressures where, Sam Darnold gets the ball away and ends up being an incomplete pass, where you don't really see on this box score, you don't really see what Nick Bosa has done, but super excited for like PFF grades and stuff like that, because we'll get to learn a lot more about some of that data when we see pressure rate and things like that. But D. Winters, quietly had a heck of a game. This was the step D. Winters needed to take, I told you about all offseason. We're not trying to compare him to Dre Greenlaw because that's a huge comparison. And trying to fill Dre Greenlaw's shoes is tough for any linebacker in the league. But my word, D. Winters showed up big in several moments. And I was really excited to see how his speed, firstly, his power and his accuracy really felt like he wasn't getting lost, at least on the initial watch. Who else? Siegel had a couple nice plays. Ronaldo Green had a couple great plays. Gave up one really big one that could have been a game changer at the end there. But fortunately, other than that one, I really felt like Ronaldo Green played pretty well. Luke Gifford in there a lot more than I anticipated him playing today, which was kind of cool. We talked about him a couple weeks ago as kind of one of those guys that a lot of people are sleeping on. That is definitely a foundational player for this special teams. Oh, we got to take off special teams. We haven't got there yet. Sam Okuwanu had a couple really nice moments. Forced fumble was huge. And then when you look at like the game stats, you've got third down efficiency at 50%, 7 for 14. Not ideal. You really need to be above 50% at the very, very, very minimum. And so being right at 50% is better than where we were several times last season, but not great. Time of possession, however, murdered. Oh, my word. My goodness. 37 minutes, 58 seconds, 22 minutes. If two things don't go wrong in terms of interceptions, we are easily over 40 minutes of time of possession in this game, which is unbelievable. It is believable in the sense that this is Kyle Shanahan's offense. He does this all the time, but unbelievable in the sense that this is not normal. This is not normal. And we have to remember that. This is a special thing that we get to see on Sundays. Okay. Turnover margin, we're even. 2 interceptions for 2 forced fumbles. Fumble recoveries, I should say. One of them won't go down as a forced fumble, but it's Nick Bosa running the right tackle into Sam Darnold's arm, so that's good enough for me. But whatever. Let's see here. 265 yards in the air to their 146, 119 yards on the ground to their 84. I mean, we had every single reason to win this game. If you didn't have special teams being knuckleheads, and if you didn't have even just one of those decisions from Brock Purdy, I feel a lot different about this game. But special teams, man, the best way I could describe this to you, and this is how I felt during the game, special teams felt like 2024. And a lot of times this offense felt like 2024. There were just moments that felt like this is not that 2023 team that we love and want to see again. But Christian McCaffrey looked more like 2023 than 2024, obviously. But definitely still not quite to that level. Christian McCaffrey looked great. I'm happy for him. This was a great first step in starting the season off right. So I'm stoked about Christian McCaffrey. Don't get me wrong. We cannot be that Christian McCaffrey reliant, though. And because George Kittle goes down all of a sudden, and then Juwan Jennings is down, like it became a little bit obvious to the Seattle Seahawks when we were going to run the ball. And when it was a guaranteed run play, they did pretty well to stop the run in kind of on the bookends of the game. At the beginning of the game and the end of the game, they did really well in stopping the run for the most part when it was clear and obvious running plays. And that predictability can happen from time to time. Like, I'm not going to freak out about that. But overall, I think if special teams can clean up if special teams could clean up a lot of bit, that would be great. I'd love that. That'd be cool. The Jake Moody situation, I really, really hope that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are having real long conversations about that. And just, whatever. You say what you need to say to the media. I get it, right? Do your job. Protect your players. I respect it. Like, I don't think Jake Moody is the worst human being that's ever lived on the planet Earth. But I do think that we need to hold this guy to a certain standard. And I do not appreciate the fact that we've gone from gold to this. We've gone from a guy who could guaranteed always hit it. Inside situations, you should be guaranteed to hit it, and struggled when it was deep. I would go for that 100 times out of 100 over a guy who has potential for long field goals, but is struggling, inconsistently struggling. His point after, when was that? I'm trying to remember when it was. There were several kicks. Even the blocked one, if you look at the angle, was 100% going through the uprights. Definitely. Like, I just look at the angle, and it's pretty obvious. It's going to go through the uprights, right? The one that he doinks, though, it scares me how far off middle he can sometimes be. That's the thing that freaks me out about Jake Moody. It's not even the like, how much is he in his head? It's where is his consistency? The bottom line is like, dude, when you're inside 35 yards, you should be hitting it right down the middle. Unless there's crazy wind or rain or, a bad footing situation. Like at this point in the season, early in the season, nice weather, you should be hitting it straight through the middle, in my opinion. And I played soccer for a long time. I was a soccer coach for a long time. So maybe I'm a little harder on kickers than other people. But as far as I'm concerned, you have one specific skill that you work on every single day. And anything inside of 35 yards should be a guarantee. That's a layup. And anything in between 35 to 45 should be a really high percentage. And anything from 45 to 55 should be, 60, at least 60%. I mean, that's what you're being asked to do. Beyond 55, you can get into a lower percentage there. I'll live with that if you're 50-50 from, 62 yards or something, right? Whatever. Okay, I can live with that. But I'm really concerned with how the variance, if he just was always kind of hitting it slightly to the left and sometimes it would tuck in and sometimes it would miss, then you're like, okay, you're a slight adjustment away from fixing it. But the variance we've seen both in preseason, in training camp, like the stuff we're hearing about, I'm just really concerned about it. That's just where I'm at. And we have a week's time plus another turf game in New Orleans. This is a good opportunity on a team that should be incredibly beatable for the 49ers. This defense, way easier than the Seattle Seahawks on paper. So I would like to believe the 49ers are going to be able to find a way to win that game. And then we go to our home opener and we start asking different questions. We start planning differently and start thinking differently based on what we learned from game 2. But I feel really good that the 49ers defense was able to, under Robert Saleh, that's like number one. 49ers defense was able to find ways to get after the quarterback, find ways to be successful, find ways to stop the run, and there were moments there where I didn't feel like they were. And so I felt like we got, even though special teams was awful, we got more complimentary football this weekend than we've seen in a little while for the 49ers, which is a good sign. It's a good sign for sure. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, appreciate you. Have a good one.